There's nothing quite so satisfying as recommending someone a book based off of one they already love. Hey everyone, I'm Jananie and this is my channel, The Story Ain't Over. If you're new here, welcome, and if you enjoyed this video, definitely go hit that subscribe button. I regularly post reading vlogs, book recommendation videos like this one, and also wrap-ups of what I've read. And if you've been here before, welcome back, because today's video is one that I've actually done multiple times before. This is the if you like this, read this video. Essentially in this video, I will introduce you to one book that you may or may not have read, and then based off of that book, I will give you a book rec that is similar to it in some way, shape, or form. It might be the vibe of the book, the plot, the types of characters, the types of themes that it explores. It could really be anything. Sometimes these book recommendations are very similar and sometimes they're a bit of a stretch, but if you liked a certain aspect of a book, you'll probably like the book I'm recommending. Obviously, this video works in reverse as well, so if you've read the book that I recommend to you, you may want to go pick up the other one that I recommended it for. Now, speaking of book recommendations, aside from using this video, you can also grab some really great ones from Book of the Month. Thank you to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video. Book of the Month is a really awesome online book service for readers. It's a really incredible way to get some really amazing book recs each month. Book of the Month's mission is to support new and emerging authors, and each month they curate a list of new and early release titles that you can choose from to get in your blue Book of the Month box. Now, I have two things about Book of the Month that I absolutely adore. The first is their skip policy, so if you ever don't like the Book of the Month selections for that month, you can just skip that month and not get charged. The second is their amazing prices for hardcover new release fiction. As we know, books are expensive these days, and with Book of the Month, you can actually grab your first box for only $9.99 with the code BREEZE. That's a really great price for a new release hardcover book and also free shipping. Now, of course, I grabbed a couple of the June selections for Book of the Month. The first book is one that I'm super excited for because it's by an author that I already really love, and that book is The Lion Women of Tehran by Marjan Kamali. Some of you may remember that The Stationery Shop by this author is one of my favorite books ever, so I'm really excited to get a new book from this author. I should also mention that this book only comes out in July, so if you get it through Book of the Month, you can get it early. And then the other book that I picked seems like a really fun romance, and that is One Star Romance by Laura Hankin. The inside of the dust jacket says, a struggling writer is forced to walk down the aisle at her best friend's wedding with the man who gave her book a very public 1-star rating in this fresh romantic comedy. That seems like it's gonna be such a fun and funny romance, so I cannot wait to read this one. With that said, if you're interested in either of those books or one of the other June selections for Book of the Month, then definitely go grab your first box for only $9.99 with the code BREEZE. The link is in my description to go grab that deal, so definitely take advantage of it, and thank you so much to Book of the Month for sponsoring today's video. Alrighty, on to the book recommendations. So if you follow me on TikTok or Instagram, you may have seen some of these recommendations before. So if you don't follow me on either of those platforms at The Story Ain't Over, then you should definitely go check those out, because sometimes I post things there that you may not get on YouTube. Okay, if you enjoyed All My Rage by Sabaa Tahir, which is one of my favorite YA contemporaries ever, then I think you'll really love the book that my imprint Boundless Press will be publishing in spring/summer 2025. And that book is Dust Settles North by Dina El-Ganaidi. Although Dust Settles North is an adult contemporary literary fiction, it does have a lot of similar themes to All My Rage, specifically the themes related to the characters' immigrant experiences, their dual identities. In the case of All My Rage, it's Pakistani American. In the case of Dust Settles North, it's Egyptian American. And both books also have a really strong element of dealing with grief, especially with the passing of a mother. Both books also have a very contemplative, heartbreaking tone to them, so I think if you enjoyed All My Rage, you'll probably love Dust Settles North. If you want to hear more information about Dust Settles North, definitely go check out the announcement video that I put up a few days ago, and also go check out my binder community down below where you can get exclusive and extra content from me, and also the behind the scenes on the publishing process for Dust Settles North. Okay, if you liked Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, then I think you need to read Disorientation by Elaine Seicho. These books are fairly similar in the sense that they're both satires and they have a little bit of a mystery thriller element to them. As many of you may know, Yellowface involves a yellowface situation in the publishing world and really talks about the pitfalls of publishing, whereas Disorientation sort of takes those ideas but in the context of academia. Now, Yellowface is a little bit more of a simpler story, I would say. It's got more of a one-track plot. It follows our white main character who is really not the good guy, and although it deals with Asian representation in publishing, it funnily enough doesn't have many Asian characters in the book itself. I'm not saying that that's wrong. This book is definitely a satire and it's meant to poke fun at this white woman character, and that's why we're following her, but I do think that Disorientation has a lot more nuance to it because it has several different characters. It follows an Asian main character who's doing her PhD and slowly finds her mind be decolonized throughout the book. I would say if you're going for a quicker read, I would go with Yellowface, but Disorientation has a lot more meat to it and a lot of other discussions that I think are really, really interesting. Okay, if you like Bridgerton, either the show or the books by Julia Quinn, then I think you should definitely go pick up Diana Quincy's novels, which are also very similar historical romances, but instead these books are written by a Palestinian American author, and she also actually writes Palestinian Arab main characters into these books. So yeah, if you really like this show, but the books weren't really it for you, then I think you'll really love Diana Quincy. I personally think that they are more well written and they just have a little bit more nuance to them, I would say. And part of that just has to do with the fact that we are dealing with a person of color main character in a historical period where they may not have had the same rights. But yeah, the two books that I'm holding up by Diana Quincy are from two different series. She has multiple series, but I think these are the two main ones that have Palestinian main characters. The Duke Gets Desperate is her newest novel, and it involves this like American Palestinian woman who shows up in England and is inheriting this castle from a distant cousin. And it turns out that castle used to be owned by this like lord who is now very angry that he has been written out of the will. And of course, a romance blooms between them as they fight over this castle. And then Her Night with the Duke is the first of a whole series, and it follows a main character who is Palestinian Arab. She is a widow and she is also a writer. She writes these travel logs, and she has sort of gotten really used to her freedom as a widow. And when she is sort of stranded at this inn one night and has to share a room with this handsome man, she ends up having sort of a one-night stand. But later she realizes that he is the betrothed to her stepdaughter. Her stepdaughter is of a similar age to her because her dead husband was much older than her and she was his second marriage. And so from when she meets the guy again and finds out that he's a duke and that he's gonna be marrying her stepdaughter, a lot of pining and just overall hijinks ensue. All right, if you liked my Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Mossveg, then I think you'll really love Big Swiss by Jen Began. I feel like both of these books are very similar. They're both satires that deal with mental illness and mental health. Essentially, My Year of Rest and Relaxation follows a main character who is severely depressed and tries to sleep away a year of her life by taking like all of these sleeping pills and different drugs, and thinks that when she wakes up after, you know, multiple months of sleeping her life away, that she will finally feel happy. And she's also aided by this like really kooky psychiatrist who gives her all these prescriptions. And overall, it's just a really funny satirical novel that deals with mental illness, and I personally related to it a lot. Now, Big Swiss to me feels fairly similar, though it does have a little bit more of a plot to it. It follows our main character, Greta, who is like this much older woman, is having sort of a midlife crisis. She's moved away from her original life and she's now working as a transcriber for this sex therapist, and she finds herself falling in love with one of the patients of the sex therapist. And from there, Greta finds herself sort of running into Big Swiss in real life and using what she knows about her from the therapy sessions to sort of woo her and be with her. Obviously, a lot of things implode in her face and she is dealing with a lot of mental health struggles along the way, but all of it is told in a very light and sort of satirical fashion that I think is just so funny. And both of these books just go off the rails and I feel like left me with very similar feelings. So if you like the chaos of either of these books, I think you'll love the other one. And if you struggle with mental illness in any way like me, then I think you'll love these books. Okay, the next few books that I'm gonna recommend could honestly be interchangeable. They work for each other in multiple different ways. So if you liked The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana, then I think you'll really like The House on the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. Both of these are sort of cozy fantasies and deal with main characters who are coming to terms with sort of their place in the world and find themselves falling for people that they did not expect to, and dealing with children in a way that they also did not expect to. Both of these are just books that feel like a warm hug, and they've got a little bit of fantasy to them, and they definitely feel like a bit of magic that's been brought to your life. So if you liked either of these books, then I think you'll also really like these next two books, which are Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry, and then Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. Both of these are also cozy fantasies and just deal with sort of low stakes but high fantasy elements to them. This involves a battle-weary orc who moves to a new town and wants to open a coffee shop, and then this one follows a curmudgeonly professor who knows everything about fairies in this alternate version of our world in sort of 1900, and she finds herself in like this small town doing research and starts to make friends in a way that she never expected to before. I feel like all four of these books share a common thread of having a fairly distinct main character who starts out in a very different position than we find them at the end, and they all involve the main characters sort of finding their place through a sense of family and comfort and also love. Okay, this next set of recommendations sort of flows one into the other, so I'll start with one, it recommends to the next, and it recommends to the next, and it recommends to the next. I wouldn't say all four are similar to each other together, but they sort of cascade down. Okay, if you liked Woman Eating by Claire Coda, which involves a contemporary vampire story, then I would recommend checking out Rouge by Mona Awad. Both of these books involve a speculative element to a real-world contemporary story, and both of them deal with a main character who has a complicated relationship with their mother, and also a complicated relationship to one aspect of themselves. So in this book, the main character has a complicated relationship with food and consumption and the fact that she's a vampire and needs blood. And then in Rouge, the main character has a complicated relationship with beauty and beauty standards, but both of them are affected by these things because of the way that their mothers dealt with these things. Another similarity I would say for these two is that they both have very little plot to them, at least in my opinion. So they're more of these like directionless reads that still have a very nice character payoff. Now, if you liked Rouge by Mona Awad, then I would also pick up Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Huang. Both of these books deal with beauty standards and sort of beauty industries, and they both involve a speculative element to them, though this book is more on the magical side and this is more on the horrific side. And I think if you found Rouge a little bit lacking in plot or structure or just like overall payoff at the end, I think you may like Natural Beauty a little bit better because it delves into a bit more topics. It definitely goes off the rails by the end, but I think it has more of a general payoff in my opinion. The main character in this book works for a beauty company called Holistic, and they do holistic natural beauty products and also treatments. And the main character starts to find herself embroiled in these secrets in the company and the sinister things that are going on. And then if you liked Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Huang, you may also like Breasts and Eggs by Miyako Kawakami. Although these books are very different, I would say this one's like a horror thriller and this one is just like a contemporary translated fiction. I will say that these books both deal with the body and a woman's body in specific in very interesting ways. Like I said, this one deals with beauty standards and what it means to have natural beauty and the lengths that people go to achieve a certain level of beauty. And I think Breasts and Eggs also touches upon this topic in an interesting way, but more related to just the pressures that are put on women and the expectations that are put on women as well. This book starts with following three different main characters. We follow these two sisters and then the daughter of one of the sisters, and we're sort of following them through their examinations of what it means to be a woman and all the things that they are going through. It talks about breasts, it talks about eggs, it talks about periods, and the specific thing from Breasts and Eggs that reminded me of Natural Beauty is the fact that one of the main characters wants to get breast implants at the beginning of the book and is just so obsessed with this idea, which is sort of similar to the obsession that sort of forms in this book from several different characters and their need for beauty. Again, genre-wise, these are very different, but I think they touch on some very similar topics and themes. Now, in terms of another speculative fiction book rack, if you liked A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson, then I think you'll love House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson. Both these books are speculative fiction, sort of historical romances, and they deal with vampires. If you like the queer aspects of A Dowry of Blood, and if you enjoyed the main character fighting against this sort of oppressive and abusive relationship, then I think you'll really enjoy House of Hunger as well because it has both of those elements. This book essentially follows one of Dracula's brides as she writes this like long letter to him that recounts her time with him over several decades and centuries, I think, and the other brides and lovers that come into their relationship, and also the way that he eventually becomes sort of this abusive force in her life. House of Hunger, in a similar-ish way, deals with this society where the nobility take these blood maids where they drink from their blood to sort of sustain their youth and their power and their beauty. And so our main character becomes one of these blood maids just to survive and, you know, make the money. But she finds herself in a really complicated romantic relationship, but also working with her fellow blood maids to understand what's going on. The romance in this one is sapphic, which is also really fun, and this one has also a polyamorous relationship to it. So I think if you liked either of these, you'd probably like the other. Okay, if you like The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali, which I've talked about incessantly and which is one of my favorite books, then I think you'll really like A Woman Is No Man by Ataf Rum. I will say that both of these books is fairly different in terms of the plot and overall story. This one is sort of a star-crossed lovers situation that starts with our lovers in 1950s Tehran, who are sort of split apart because of the political upheaval and sort of other manipulations in progress. And from there, we mainly follow the girl main character and how her life sort of changes and the different things that she has to go through. And a lot of those parts deal with themes of like mental illness, mental health, motherhood, immigrant experience, and also intergenerational trauma. And I think those parts, sort of the middle part of the book where we are following our main character go through these different things, that part is very similar to A Woman Is No Man. Although this book follows mainly these two characters, this book follows three different main characters. It follows the grandmother Farida, the daughter-in-law Isra, and then the granddaughter Dea. And essentially we're flipping back and forth in time between these three different main characters. And we start in Palestine with Isra when she marries Farida's son, and then we follow her as she immigrates to the States and lives with his family and starts to feel all of the pressures of what it means to be a woman in her culture and with the pressures that Farida puts on her. And then we also get Dea's perspective in the future, and we know that Isra and her husband have died and that Farida has now been raising Dea and her sisters. And so there's a level of mystery there that I think is also similar to the mystery in Stationery Shop, because you're always wondering how did the two characters get split apart. But I think the main thing that these two share in common is just this idea of intergenerational trauma, the idea of mental illness and mental health in women specifically in these situations, and also specifically the experience of being a woman as an immigrant in America, especially in like the 90s and then also in like like the 50s, 60s. The last thing I'll say about these two is that they're both very, very heartbreaking books, so you should definitely grab the tissues, but they're definitely worth the read. Okay, and then on a similar note, the final recommendation that I have is if you liked Pachinko by Min-jin Lee, then I think you'll love Against the Loveless World by Susan Abdullawa. This book is essentially a intergenerational saga of this one Korean family through the 1900s, and it starts with the teenaged Sunja in 1900s during the Japanese occupation of Korea, and follows her through her life and all of the like stories of her descendants and family and how the trauma of their situation follows them through the years. And then this book, although it's a little less of an intergenerational book, it does have a small aspect of that, but it does mainly follow our main character through the many years of her life. And we start with her in an Israeli solitary confinement cell as she is writing down her life story. And then we flash back to the start. I think what both of these books share in common is this idea of living as a person in an occupied territory and being forced to flee from your home without a choice. They also are both very epic and very long sagas, and they deal with these female main characters who have just been through so freaking much. Although this book deals a lot more with the politics of the situation in Palestine, this one is still similar in the sense that it does deal with the historical politics of this whole situation. Both these books are very thought-provoking and very stunningly written. You cannot finish these books without feeling absolutely bereft and heartbroken, so definitely gather the tissues for these as well. Alrighty, with that said, those are all of the books that I wanted to recommend today. I hope you enjoyed this video and you enjoyed getting these book recommendations. Definitely let me know in the comments which of these book recommendations you enjoyed and which one of them you found kind of surprising and that you want to check out. Let me know also if you have any, if you like this, read this book recommendations based off of the books that I talked about today. And as always, if you haven't already, go check out my Instagram, Goodreads, TikTok, and Bindery community down below. Thank you so much to my Bindery members for supporting me and my channel and making all of this possible. If you're not part of my Bindery community, then you should definitely go check it out. You can get extra exclusive content from me and also get the behind the scenes on the publishing process with my imprint, Boundless Press. We recently acquired our first ever book, Dust Settles North, which is coming out in spring, summer 2025. So if you want to get the behind the scenes on that whole process, definitely join down below. With that said, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video, and please remember that the story ain't over. Bye!